everyone, it's Courtney from Soul Deep Devotions, and I am coming at you with another video devotion. I just figured since we finished the Suffering series last week and we haven't done a video devotion in a while that we could do one and break up the reading a little bit and just give you guys a break as far as reading goes. So today I want to come from Romans 2 verses 1 through 4, but more specifically I just want to focus on verse 4. That's what we're building up to eventually. So I want to read Romans 2:4 in the Message for you because this is really what caught my eye. It says, God is kind, but he's not soft. In his kindness, he takes us firmly by the hand and leads us into a radical life change. So in verses 1 to 3, the passage is talking about how God judges sin and yet gives us a very important caution to believers. So Paul, who wrote Romans, gives us a warning that just because we've been saved and redeemed doesn't mean that we're allowed to stop being aware of how we can fall into sin. Because even our judgment of others for their lack of righteousness is sin. So if I'm a believer and I look at somebody who doesn't know Jesus yet, who lives outside of salvation, who needs me to really inspire and encourage and bring them into the kingdom of the Lord, if instead of doing that, I'm judging them, then my sin of judgment, of judging where it's not my place, is equal to the sinner that lives outside of salvation and whatever it is that they're struggling with. The sin is equal. So our human judgment doesn't throw God off of the sins that we're struggling with as believers, because just because we're under the blood of Christ doesn't mean we don't struggle. Doesn't mean that sin stops tempting us. Our salvation doesn't give us a hall pass to stop maturing spiritually, and it doesn't give us an excuse to keep sinning and say, oh, Jesus has got this. I don't need to worry about that. I'm good because, Jesus is going to forgive me. So all of that is in verses 1 through 3. And all of that leads up to verse 4 where there's this beautiful conviction. And I want to read it for you again in the NLT because it really just breaks open what I had said before. It says, "Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" So first off, this speaks to the amazing character of God. God's character is that he's kind, yes, and his kindness isn't just to make us feel all snuggly and warm and fuzzy, although it does do that. It does make us feel good because he is kind. His kindness is not solely to make us feel good. His kindness is to make us feel conviction. His kindness is its purpose is that we would see his kindness and experience it and then turn away from our sin and the things that we struggle with. His kindness is so that we would feel conviction and be led by the Holy Spirit away from our sin and into radical life change, as it says in the Message. So let's be real. Conviction is never fun. It's that feeling of, oh man, I messed up and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I don't know how I'm going to right this wrong. But without conviction, we would never see the error of our sin and turn away from it. Conviction is something that we should embrace, and instead of allowing it to condemn or shame us, we should allow it to show us the error of our ways and push us towards righteousness and away from sin. Because let's face it, sin makes us look less like Jesus. And if the whole point of being a Christian, if the whole point of following Jesus is that we would model a lifestyle that looks more and more like Jesus with each passing day, then our sin should be something that we actively want to push away. And conviction helps us to actively want to push sin away because, let's face it, our flesh desires to sin. It desires that instant pleasure that comes with what we want. And we don't always want the right things for ourselves. So if we want our lives to look more like Jesus, then we need to allow that conviction to help us push away from that sinful nature. Our knee-jerk reaction, ironically enough, though, is always to shy away from conviction. It's always to deny that we struggle with something. All the while, Jesus is telling us it's okay. Let that feeling push you into a lasting, radical, and genuine redirection of your life. So conviction can be a large and noticeable lifestyle change, like abstaining from sex, like from sex before marriage, like not allowing yourself to become drunk, like avoiding music and TV shows that you know don't glorify God or help you pursue a lifestyle that pleases the Lord. But convictions can also be small life changes. And so lately, let me share with you one conviction that I've been feeling the Lord push me towards. Lately, the Lord has been showing me or convicting me to not use my social media as a weapon. And you might be like, what, Courtney? Like, I've been on your social media. It's not an overly horrible place. And that might be true, but let's face it, my generation falls back on this coping mechanism of using the World Wide Web as our personal diaries. So what do I mean by that? I mean that when we feel rejected, or when we feel that somebody's been rude to us or offended us or is coming at us sideways, we take to the internet and we try and passive-aggressively slam them without even using their names, because if you don't use their names, then you can deny that it was ever even about them, right? But, and we do that. We take to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those platforms so that we can try and regain control over something that hurt us. But Jesus has been challenging me to only use my social media to glorify him. And what does that mean? It means that if it's not nice, if it doesn't glorify him, if it's intentionally meant to hurt somebody, then I don't post it. Then I don't say it. Because social media gives us this really cool ability to really think about what we say before we say it. Because nobody has to know what it is that you've said before you hit that post button. So your words are completely hidden from the world until you decide to share it. So you can edit it, you can change it, you can transform it, you can decide to not say it at all until you hit that submit button. So recently, I was going to tweet something that was in response to something that offended me from a friend. But Jesus convicted me to not post it with this important command. And it's like the age-old, love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus convicted me that although the Bible doesn't say it explicitly, that command applies to modern conveniences and technology. It really does. Because loving your neighbor means that you think twice about that scathing blog post or a vindictive Facebook post. Loving your neighbor means not posting passive-aggressive Snapchats. Loving your neighbor means that you practice self-control and not subtweet your friend on Twitter, no matter how offended that you might feel by what they have done or said. And you know what? That conviction continues to push me into radical life change, because I find myself going to my social medias and I feel Jesus saying within me, does that glorify me? Or is that meant to intentionally hurt somebody? Is that thought that you're having meant to be on a public forum? And if the answer is no, then I don't say it. If the answer is no, then I take it to Jesus instead of the internet. Because really, what's the internet going to do for me except create more drama? So, that conviction to clean up my social media wasn't just a one and done conviction. Every time I go to post, I feel that conviction tugging me, asking me if I'm posting to glorify Jesus or to glorify myself. Am I posting to model Jesus, or am I posting to tear someone else down? Because you see, even though I have salvation and I am a believer, I'm never done trying to look more like Jesus, and Jesus knows that. So if I remain teachable, the Lord, in all of his kindness, can push me towards radically changing my life so that the Cortney of yesterday doesn't act like the Cortney that you see now. And so that the Cortney that you see now is radically different than the Cortney that you might see tomorrow. And she's radically different for the better. She's radically different because she looks more like Jesus. So don't run away from your convictions, fam. Don't do it. Instead, use them to make you more amazing than you already are. Okay? So I will see you guys later. That's it for me today. Bye. Have a good day.